how's it going?
It's good to see you.
It's good to see you as well. I think the last time was that I was here.
I don't even know.
Kai's graduation,
right,
maybe.
yeah.
That might have been it. But I've seen you in between.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I didn't remember all these animals you had. Maybe they were tucked away or
They
a
were
lot
hiding,
going on.
probably, yeah.
Gotcha. So I feel like this has been sort of a long time coming.
Yep.
I think like it's always been something in my mind to sit down and chat with you. Obviously we've been chatting for a long time, but to do it on the record and to, sort of like hash out some of the things that we do talk about. And I don't know. Also, usually it's a one-to-one conversation, me and you to solely benefit from, but hopefully, just thinking about it, there's potentially other people that could benefit from some of the things we talk about. I hope, at least.
Yeah, hopefully.
So I think the timing's really good in terms of both, your situation. It sounds like your energy will be higher under those circumstances, and for me, just a little warning, I think I'm more in a vulnerable place than like I've been in a long time, which is like kind of shocking, because for a little while I was really good. I felt good, but just a lot's been happening lately. So I think I don't know. I think it should be interesting because of that.
I mean, I'm totally comfortable with that, but I also know it's probably like you're just feeling it more. So, but that like you vulnerable, like it's only an asset to me. Like I don't have any. Might feel raw to you, but like for me, it's fine. However you show up is however you are. It's like fine.
Yeah, and I actually, interestingly enough, since this was going to be next week, I was thinking about calling you in between so I could, just in the same fashion that I've called you in the past, when we've connected, or just, whether it's just to say hello or to work through something. I was like, oh man, it's about time, like because of what's happening, I want to get in touch. And I was actually going to do that at some point this week in advance, and so that we could, I don't know, maybe get that out of the way so that we could kind of focus on what I at least had originally visioned. But then I thought about it, and the way that it worked out now, it's like, well, I don't know if it comes up and if it makes sense, or even just to sort through that here and now, like that might be worthwhile. I think first, I think it makes sense to sort of talk about you and your personal work, just to let people know. I mean, people who watch this will probably already know who I am, but they won't know who you are. So just from my point of view, you're my cousin Christine. We call her Cissy, a staple in my life, somebody that I've always gone to with the big important things, and someone I've had a lot of fun with, just at family gatherings and get-togethers. In those early years, it was always great for me to have somebody that I can express myself to in a way that I feel like I'm not always comfortable, at least I wasn't always comfortable with doing at that point in time with some people. I think a lot of times it's hard to find the right person to talk to about certain things that you actually really do feel comfortable in a non-judgmental way, where you can feel open and not judged. And I think that was very important for me growing up and becoming who I am, that I had that in my life.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, so that's who you are to me. But if by all means, who
Yeah, I mean, I'm a writer by trade. I'm a mom, and my sort of subject matter expertise that I write about and speak about is how adversity in childhood affects adult life, basically like relational, financial, social, and just how your childhood kind of can follow you around and impact you in your adult life. But also some of the medical and psychological impacts of adverse childhood experiences and traumatic stress, and how that wears on the body and can wear on relationships or be challenging. So like those are interesting subjects to me, as well as how do people find to heal? How do people like come from a crappy childhood and then become a decent parent? How does somebody struggle in relationships early on and then go on to have good relationships? How do people heal from trauma when they feel like they'll never recover? How do you still have a meaningful life even if you're also balancing it with symptoms of traumatic stress, which may come and go your whole life. Some people heal completely and feel cured, and some people have it more like it's a chronic condition. So it's like, how do people live well and manage with adversity? Usually adversity in the past, not also in the present, because childhood adversity has a distinct impact usually on people. That's a little bit different than trauma that happens in your adult life when you're more mature and kind of formed and whole. But those are like fascinating subjects to me anyway. So I tend to interview, write about my own experiences, but also interview and write about other people that have managed to go through some sort of trauma and then not only heal, but find a way to help others heal, start organizations, start nonprofits, kind of challenge maybe the status quo where there's problems in the medical model that like currently exists. Like how can we change it? So even since I've more recently been diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and that too, it's like just figuring out how to live as well as possible with it, even things that are trying and that you can't necessarily change. How do you still have meaning, a good life, a decent quality of life amidst challenges, not like just waiting for challenges to go away to like sort of like then be able to have a life. How to have a good life during challenges, I think has always been interesting to me. And you know, but I mean, just in terms of us, I'm grateful you've ever been able to call and feel like you could trust me, because to me, like that, there's no higher honor than somebody just being vulnerable and real and trusting you. Like that to me is like amongst the hardest things to accomplish like in the whole world. So it's an honor if somebody trusts you, and for me to trust somebody back too. You know, I've been able to talk to you about stuff too. And, you know, I've cried with you and talked about things I haven't talked about easily with others as well, about my own diagnosis since I was diagnosed. So like, I really appreciate that. It's just very real. So I like that. It doesn't matter how much we see each other. It just feels like connected when I do see you.
Yeah. And I think it's, you know, it's a rare and hard to come by thing. I think, you know, as I've grown and gotten more comfortable with myself, I feel like, you know, I do my best to add people into that. You know, I think I compartmentalize to a degree, right? Different people to, you know, knowing who and what to share with, but you know, I feel like it's got to start somewhere, and I think it started with you, and then, you know, now I've over time, you know, people have fluctuated, come in and out of my life, and at different times I've been able to open up in those ways, and, you know, everyone sort of, you know, some people you continue to persist that way, but I also recognize that it can be really hard for some people to connect with, you know, in managing those relationships as well, because one thing I've been noticing is once you do start to get to that place of open vulnerability, friendships and relationships, and it's, you know, the word vulnerable, right? You can get hurt, and you can, you know, you're sort of putting yourself in the position that can happen, and as a result, like it has, you know, and things can come up and misunderstandings can happen, and, you know, just words, right? Words can just have such an impact and make people recoil or make people, you know, pull back, and I don't know, it's like a dangerous place it could be, you know. For me right now, like in this part of my life, season or whatever it's going through, I feel like it's like a very like lost focused time, you know. There's a lot of things that are like leaving. I think, you know, everything with this past year with the divorce and the show ending, I think that all, you know, that was all weighing on me heavy, and so, you know, not having that relationship anymore, and all of that, and that world ending, and then, you know, we're starting new things, and I think I started having a mindset of this is where my life is heading, this is what I'm going to do, and I have to kind of rearrange all that. Yeah. And you know, I can do that. It's taking time, and I'm working through it, and I'm getting better, and then it's just like a couple more things that got compounded on there. Yeah. You know, a recent breakup that I'm going through, which we'll get into, you know, a little later, I think. But so I feel like right now, I've been really like feeling the things leaving, like leaving and getting an understanding of like what that means, right? Like, especially when it comes to people, right? So I've lost, I've lost things, and that hurts, right? Whatever it may be, a high value item or something that you're emotionally attached to.
Yeah.
But when it comes to people, it's just like it's almost like an intangible type of loss.
Yeah, and it's nothing hurts more. I mean, it's a raw kind of loss that it's. I think breakup in relationship losses like just touch core emotions. Like it's different than losing. I mean, it's not like losing a job can't be painful because that can be really painful too. But core relationships like just kind of rattle us, I think, to it. It's like primal, relationships and attachment and our connections to other people. It is really raw and vulnerable.
Yeah, and you've always reminded me that we're wired to connect, right? So whether it be to physical items and all the things that you accrue to make you feel secure and all that, or to people so that you have a community or a partnership or whatever it may be. There's definitely things inside of us from a probably scientific chemical standpoint, never mind just like the emotional side, that we develop these attachments for a reason.
Oh my God, and I think, I don't know how old you have to be to finally realize, like, I think I was in my 20s and I was like, we're meant to be interdependent. I think I thought of independence as the primary goal of like life and success. Complete independence was like the highest form of being a person. That's what I would have said up until my 20s. And then in my 20s, it's like, oh, we're supposed to recreate some sort of unit. It doesn't have to be a traditional family unit, but like we do recreate communities because that's how humans thrive. We thrive in community, and it doesn't have to be a nuclear family community. Excuse me, puppy. But those connections are key. Like they make us healthier and they make our lives more rich. So I think that too sometimes is a surprise in the U.S. because we act like like independence is ideal and interdependence is kind of optional, but it's not really. Like it's not optional for human beings to be. We don't thrive. We don't do our best when we're totally independent. We're meant to be not codependent, but we're meant to be interdependent. And I think all the science too now, even in schools that like are helping kids become healthier in school. The whole science is like, okay, the teacher has to be regulated in order to help regulate a child. And finally we understand like, oh, regulation doesn't happen like a kid has a skill or not. It happens in a relationship. And it happens in a relationship like with a safe adult. So kids can't learn to calm down intrinsically on their own. They need to regulate with another adult and learn how to do it. And then as adults, like that's still true. We're wired like to connect. I mean, I think we learned that through the pandemic too. Like some of us that were introverts even are like, well, yeah, I still need some people though. Like,
Yeah.
Or I need some kind of human contact. Because even our nervous systems get calmer in relation to like being connected to each other or having animals, or being connected to nature. But those connections, strengthen us and are good for us. So, they're needed. So I think I just think sometimes we also live in a society that doesn't prioritize relationships that much, even though they're so central to our well-being. And at least for me, from being sick, like nothing else has been more important. It's like I don't want to go on any big trips. I don't need to buy any big, I'm facing the end of my life, and it's like I don't need things. I don't need a new place to go. I just want to spend like quality time with people that I love, and more of it. And I don't even want to meet that many new people because I'm like, no, I want to spend time with the people that are in my life that I love. Like I want to make sure people that I love feel loved, know I love them, know what I love about them, and I also, nothing is more satisfying or strengthening to me right now. It's like, oh, I mean, I think there are some people that know that more inherently, but for me, even though I do prioritize relationships, I still didn't prioritize like the good ones as much. I sort of took them for granted a little bit, and I think now it's like nothing's more important to me.
And that's interesting because I feel like, you know, when it comes to end of life, you think about bucket list and you think about all these, you know, these things of, oh, what haven't I done that I've always wanted to do? And I'm somebody who's, I feel like I've made sure to check off bucket list items, you know. But I definitely, you know, just thinking about it, like, you know, people might have something very strong they wanted to do, visit Paris or go somewhere, but, you know, when it comes down to it, you know, that's for personal experience, right? It may be really important, but, you know, you placing such a high emphasis and value on the connections and the people, I think, you know, it kind of gets you back to the fundamentals of, you know, what is most important.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. What's most important, who's most important, and what's really valuable at the end of your life. You know, like all that stuff about like you can't take your money with you. I mean, that's all true. It's like, you know, like, yeah, and the quality of relationships. And also it's like interesting because like somebody reached out to me recently that I knew from college, that I was really close to in college, and I have not been in touch with basically all these years, and we recently reconnected. And it's also amazing how like pivotal key relationships that you've had at different times in your life, that strength of relationships can last even after not seeing people for a really long time. Like if you're really yourself with somebody, it's sort of still there, like decades later. Like to me, that's a little bit astounding. Like it's not just how much time and who you see, how much time you spend with people. It's also like if you were fundamentally really open and honest at some time with someone, that kind of never goes away.
And if you've crossed a certain threshold of like, we know each other, you know, like I feel like there's some friends that I can just pick up for years and it doesn't feel like anything's changed. It doesn't feel like it's just, you know, but then there's acquaintances that I'll see and I'll be like, I don't even know who you are. You know what I mean? I have no idea. So yeah, I think, I've always felt good about that when I run into people who, you know, who had big enough impact or significant, you know, who were spent enough time with. It's just like, oh, you know, I completely remember you, who you are, our dynamic, and you know how good it feels to be around you. So yeah.
And I think as I get older, for me, it's like also realizing it does happen more than once, thank goodness, but also it doesn't happen with everyone. So there is like a realization like, wow, when you really do connect with somebody, not just in dating, but just in friendship, like, oh, it's kind of more rare than I thought too. You know, like it's a little more, I think when I was younger, I just think, you know, you just meet like endless amounts of people and maybe connect, but having that ease with connecting is really nice and kind of rare, and like, it's nice that it lasts.
Yeah, and it seems to be that, I don't know, as I'm getting older, it seemed to happen a lot more, I'll just finish this thought. It seems to happen a lot more at a younger age, and now as I'm getting older, you know, you don't pick up too many new people that you can deeply connect with, maybe on occasion, you know, but I feel like it's like you collect everyone at the first half of your life, and then you maintain those relationships for the second, and it's nice and lucky when you do meet a new friend who like, oh, you know, pick them up along the way, and it's like, oh, we can still, you know, create a deep connection here.
Yeah, but I think part of the reason that happens when we're young is because we don't even try to pretend when we're young that we figured it out. And I think the older we get, sometimes we get more defended and armored up and less willing to be vulnerable because we think we maybe should know more or like be more established somehow.
Put on a a mask or a front or yeah.
Whereas when you're in your teens and 20s, it's like, I don't know, like, who knows what,
Yeah.
who knows?
What if I do this? Are you going to judge me? No, cool. All right, we're in. You know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that should alleviate all the problems. Yeah, in the sense of non-continuity. What's the word? Continuity. Now we all of a sudden have mics here. Yeah, just a little technical difficulties, but we're getting back to it. I think the thing we had mentioned before during the break is that I would tell you a little bit about what this is all about.
Yeah.
And to be fully clear or transparent, I'm still working that out. I think I don't know if I don't know if I should be calling it a podcast because I don't know if that's what it is. I kind of really love the idea of interviewing people, and it just so happens that interviews kind of go hand in hand with the idea of podcasts, and then these mics make it even look and feel even more like a podcast. But I don't know, like I don't plan to do like a regular routine of podcasting. I think like it involves some level of, hey, once a week or once every whatever so often. But I do like the idea of sitting down and having the discussions. So maybe it is a podcast. I don't know.
Yeah.
Still sorting that out. But in general, I think the idea is to sort of take ideas, thoughts, and conversations that I have and with others as well, and share them, put them into the world, and see what type of effect it has, see how it resonates with people. I think it's sort of a creative endeavor. It's something that I'm compelled to do, driven from inside, and I don't think it's like my thing. Like I don't think I'm like now I'm just going to do a podcast. I think it's like a tool in a few different ways that I'm trying to basically put out my internal world or the thoughts and things I have inside out. And so yeah, I think it just so happens that having deep conversations is something that I've always enjoyed and always it's been important to me. So yeah, maybe it's a podcast, maybe not.
Yeah. I'm a fan of conversations with Stevie, whatever form that takes.
Yeah.
Whether it's quarterly or annually or however you do it, however you're going to do it. But I would be curious to see your conversations with other people too. So I'm sure others would as well.
Yeah. And I've filmed a few. One person kind of filmed practice with me and doesn't want to put it out, which is just fine. I think that was the terms that we went under, but it's also like, oh man, we had some good combos.
Yeah.
That, maybe I can just cut you out of it and throw some of that out. There's another one that I filmed that I will put out at some point. I just feel like waiting for the time to be right. But yeah, I think that kind of brings me to this point of like recognizing, like, I don't know. Right now I've been in this post-television, post-reality TV world of going public, having a following of, a lot of people that I don't know but seem to be, for the most part, very supportive, are interested in my life, and I'm trying to figure out and navigate what I plan to, like, how I want to interact, what I want to do if I'm going to do anything with that. And I think I've been trying a few different things, and I've sort of been slowly, like, I put some stuff out there, but I've been reluctant in a way because I think for a number of reasons. I think part of it is there was just so much pressure this year on everything that I've said and done, and I think constantly getting, like, not just regular feedback, because I think in everyday situation from your family, friends, or partner, you get feedback, and it's like, yeah, I can make those minor adjustments here and there, but it's like it was so much all at once that, like, you kind of, I don't know if it's like, I didn't go to numb to it, but it's just like an overload, and it's like, well, I can't change everything, I don't know, like, I don't know how to digest this except just to kind of read it, discard it, or accept it, or whatever. And I think, I need to acknowledge that has an effect on me,
Well, I mean, also, I don't know, you were like the last person anyone would have ever guessed would have been on a TV show, because you were uber private before. So, like, I don't think, I mean, like I blog and I share a lot of personal stuff, and I'll put it out in writing. Like I don't usually put it out in video form, but I'm pretty open in writing. And in that sense, I can share openly. But not everybody shares openly. And you are definitely a person who like has been very discriminate about how much you share. So I can't imagine, particularly for you, what this experience has been like to be so visible in like your personal life. You know, like visible is one thing, but then also visible not just in general, but like in like attempting a marriage. So that's like a lot. And I don't think a lot of people relate or share that experience or have that experience. So I mean, it's got to be a lot. Like it's got to be a unique and heavy experience.
Yeah, I think I think it definitely involved like you know a heavy release of control.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, okay, this is something, just like anything you put out to the world, you can't take back. I mean, some things you can, you take a post down, you whatever. But this was sort of an acknowledgement that like, okay, once it's out there, it is what it is, and accept the consequences of that. And I do think that over time I felt like, I think it comes down to sort of like, it started out, and which I still have perfectionist tendencies of like, if I'm going to put something out, I need to make sure stamp of approval, like it's as good as I would need it to be to feel like I'm okay with it. And I think over time, as I'm continually growing, and I think I'm letting go of some of that. I'm letting go of these concepts of even perfection, because even if it's perfect now, it might not be perfect later.
Yep.
So even if it's not good now, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, if it's a song or a picture or whatever, if you put it out, it also is a timestamp of this is where I was at now and this is where I'm at later. It's a little bit more significant because it's sort of like the only impression that some people will ever get.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, I've also realized that some of that doesn't matter. Like if that's the only impression I've ever left on somebody, never even heard from me or seen me again, then does it even matter?
Yep.
It's more about the people on my day-to-day life,
Yep.
the ones that are actually going to affect me, or if I let it affect me. So yeah, I think it's kind of an evolution process. I think like, from even things like tattoos or things that you have to give serious thought to before you do. It's just like, okay, well, what's forever? Like if I get this lion on my chest, so that means I keep it forever, but it's like, well, I'm close to halfway through my life. You know what I mean? So it's like, and again, it could be a lot closer to pass at that. I have no idea. So for me, it's like, okay, like some of these things that used to matter so much don't matter as much anymore. They don't hold as much weight. They still matter, but they don't, and I also trusted that to some degree, with enough time and wisdom and whatever, I would have enough self-control to manage and be okay with how I acted or reacted and whatever. And for the most part, I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. I mean, I not to, just from an outside perspective, I saw someone on Thanksgiving that just saw the show. So like they were asking me about you and the show, and I was saying one of the things that I was sharing was I thought it did do a pretty good job of capturing who you are. Like you don't know when you're watching these TV shows is this like anything like the people are in real life, but I do think it like captured your essence, essentially who you are. Like I don't feel like it was like oh, that's not the Stevie I know, or like I don't know if that's some comfort, like because at least you were I don't know, maybe some people feel like they're not captured accurately or something, but I felt like for the most part they honored and didn't mischaracterize you. I don't know if you feel like that, but
I feel good about it. Like I feel like, at the end of the day, like I can go back and watch it, and for the most part, like, oh, I don't regret too much of it. I think it was a really special time in my life. It was challenging for sure, but overall, the experience being there was a positive one, and now I feel pretty good about the level of support I've been getting through some of the hard things. So I feel like in general, people were left with a good impression of who I am. So yeah.
I know in the writing world, it's like they say, just don't read the comments. Like you can put your craft out there, and it can be even really a personal thing you share, but it's optional if you get the feedback. If you read the feedback, or if you read the comments, or like, so you sort of can put it out there and then you just can let it go. But it must be something different when you like are getting a lot of feedback, like you said, like it's inherent in it in a visual medium, like, or a personal, when it's personal and it's more interactive. People are like giving feedback. So it's just curious.
Yeah, I think one thing that's kind of interesting, like, sometimes you walk down the street and you're always wondering, like, I wonder what people think, or like, you're in school or you're in some type of public setting, and sometimes they share what they think, but a lot of them are not going to tell you what they think about you, and most of the time they're going to keep the negative comments to themselves. But, now the forums and the internet comment sections is just like, oh, hey, here's a transparent look into my mind, and you have no idea who I am, but here's my thoughts. And it's like, oh, okay, so now you kind of like, you're in this other world where you can see everything that people think, and it's like, oh wow, like I had an idea of some of this stuff, but I didn't, it's just a pretty wide range of things, and some of it's useful and some of it's not, and you can usually sort through between like what someone's intention is, like sometimes the screen names stay the same, so it's like, oh yeah, this person's not going to like me no matter what I do, and this person's always going to have my back no matter what, and that's great. So yeah, in time you start to not give too much weight on it, and you kind of just you take the good with the bad, and you take more of the good if you can. I'm lucky that I do have, I did end up receiving a lot of good positive energy and positive feedback. So but yeah, still to a degree sorting that out. I think I have one last battle. I don't even know if I'll include this either, but I think I told you. Did I tell you that my ex is going to be on TV one last time in December to introduce the new couples from the new season?
Oh, and, no.
I've assuming that there were some things that were said. I have no idea what they are, so I think that will kind of be like the last piece of that I have to address, or maybe not address, but we'll see. I think I probably will have to address it.
Did you just find that out?
I kind of recently, a few weeks ago, I heard it, and then it's like, okay, if I based on track record, based on what's happened so far, it's probably going to be something that I'm going to have to address.
Yeah.
But I think that's it, though. You know what I mean? I think once the divorce paperwork is finalized and that is over and done with, then I think that, like, I feel like it never really ended. It kind of ended, like the whole experience itself. But I think that will kind of probably be the cutoff point. I mean, it'll pop up in small ways. I think people always bring it back, and the show will air somebody somewhere else, and kind of come back to life. But overall, I think the story will be told.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think one interesting thing about the whole ending is that the story never really was told. I think the show ended, and then the divorce announcement happened, but there was never any story, nobody ever found out what happened from this point to that point. And I always thought I would have to be told. But it seemed like, based on the situation, people formed their opinions and didn't really ask any questions about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that will be necessary, or at least parts of it will be necessary once, come a month or so. But yeah, I mean, I never for me, it's like, I'll just say what I feel is necessary. And so far that's been, good and effective.
Yeah.
And then that's another thing too, even talking about it now, right? Again, do I put that into the world or not? Like, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
To be determined. I don't think I'm doing any harm here. I think I'm just kind of speaking my experience,
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, that must be a lot of letting go too. Of I would like it being so public. That would be hard to not. I don't know, just not want to have the last word. It must just not last word, but like yeah, just it must be an art in letting go of how how it gets framed. Like it's like you're gonna have your own way of framing it, and I'm sure the other person is too. And like it's just weird to like just have to leave it at that, you know?
Yeah, and that's why I think so far it's like, okay, I've been kind of letting it happen in a natural way where, okay, if something is said that I feel I need to address or I disagree with or I, whatever, I'll just speak on that, and anything that I just feel is necessary to say.
Yep.
And so far, like, like I'm fine where it's at now. Like I feel like for the most part pretty good about it all. Like I don't think I need to like. I think I've explained everything I needed to explain. I mean, I think that you could always do more, but I'm just like trying to find a balance of
Yeah.
how much is right. I guess any other thoughts on that piece of the 2022?
I know it's like almost December, so it's like kind of the reflecting of looking back on the whole year.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah. It's challenging because it's something it's something I can always process and work through, and I've always done it. But it's like I also haven't done it in a way that I'm putting it out into the world.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, still trying to figure that out, I guess. But also, I mean, being in front of a camera and like telling the story is something I did for months straight.
Yeah.
Just like constantly, like, okay, tell it, what it is, what's happening, and all that. So it's been a little while, but yeah, no, I think you're right. I think at one point I was very private. Now this is like, okay, the complete polar opposite of that, and I think there was always something inside of me that kind of wanted to like, share certain aspects of myself with more than just my friends and family. So I think it was kind of a chance thing to happen, but an effective way to do that, right? Because it was very much like my personal story and our story, So like it's not like here's Steve, coding a app.
Yeah.
It's like here's Steve how he interacts with another person or
Yeah.
multiple people.
Yep. And it's so brave because it's so organic. It's like improv. I mean, there's no way to know ahead of time how it's going to go. So I think that's why people watch the show too. I mean, it's just an incredibly brave endeavor.
Yeah, and I feel like I really like I don't think I'm good with scripts or acting. I don't think I'm like I think I'm it's really challenging for me. So I think on the cuff, yeah, I guess you're saying like improv, like cameras rolling live, here's who you are, here's what you're thinking and feeling. I feel like that's where I do best. Like if they said like, hey, say this,
Yeah, yeah.
like I would struggle because you're trying to get the words right, trying to get everything right, but if I just express myself naturally and what I'm really feeling and trying to vocalize it, then like that, I don't know, that seems to be good for me.
Yeah, and I think like if you're doing a project with conversations, whatever conversations you're craving, I'm sure other people are craving too. I mean, just there's no wasted art or creativity because it's like other people are searching too.
Yeah, and they're thinking and exploring, and I feel like there are common trends or threads and thought processes, and I think and I usually leave conversations with you and people like you with the idea of like, oh, that was actually really informative and beneficial, and I'm sure if anybody else was hearing that, they probably would have pulled something cool from it. So I think that kind of ties back into the idea of sharing these things and finding new ways to share them as well. One is conversation, two is like, okay, maybe like I've been trying to experiment with like solo video type of stuff,
Yeah.
or solo audio, and it's a bit it is harder for me. I feel like I'm a lot more compelled to like you saw how much work it was to set this up,
Yeah.
but like I'm like, I want to do this so we can have this conversation, and I'm more driven to do it. But then if I'm home by myself trying to shoot by myself, I'm like just sitting there, and I'm like, I don't know, for some reason it's like harder, but that's just, I don't know. So I think I like collaborating better.
Yeah. I know. Have you ever thought of taking any classes like, even monologues or doing, because I feel like too, you almost need a community to support you if you're doing something independent. Like if you're doing solo video, I think it helps to be in a community where other people are creating it too, or like giving assignments, or like there's some impetus, because it's hard to just pick up and feel like you give yourself total permission to just be creative. And then like, I don't know, I feel like, at least for me, I need some support before I can do a solo endeavor. Like I need like a place I'm going to check in about it, even though it's still my own project that I'm doing alone. Like I need like conditions around me to make it happen, or else it's hard for me to get over the inertia of like, is this like a good enough idea? Is it worth my time? Or any of those obstacles to creation.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think some of the most challenging days are if I just wake up and decide I'm going to do something, and it's like, okay, where do you start? Where, where is it going to come from? Where the ideas are, and how are you going to do it? And like sometimes I can really hone in and try to get something, a focused thing. But yeah, accountability, ideas and encouragement and all that, definitely is helpful. It's like something out of pure nothing, like, all right, I'm just gonna think my way into sharing something,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I struggle with it, and I think sometimes I'm really inspired, and sometimes I'll get inspired by something. But yeah, I could, give that some thought. I think that would probably be helpful. Yeah, and you're right. Even if I had somebody else who I was working with, even just doing that, if they were doing it too, and just kind of bouncing off them, I think I collaborate better, even if it is a solo thing.
Yeah, like comparing each other's videos, or what'd you learn this week or whatever, but like just having like a person you're going to check in with it about, so that you, like, at least for me, for writing, I have to be in a writing group. Even though if I'm writing alone, I still have to be in a group in order to stay with a constant flow of writing. Otherwise, I can talk myself out of like, does this matter? Who cares? Is anyone even going to look at this? Like all those voices can get loud if I'm not in a creative community where I'm like, of course I'm interested in what you're doing, like to the other person.
Yeah, and that feedback is so valuable, because it's like, oh, you like it? All right, I will put it out,
Yeah.
Because I have a hard drive of like, it's turned into like a graveyard, what I mean? Like all these things that you know what? Like, maybe one day I'll put that out, or maybe one day I'll work on that further,
Yep.
But sometimes if I start working on something and I show somebody and they actually, they show any type of interest, then I'm like, all right, I do want to get this done.
Yeah.
And one cool thing, I made that video of touring Boston. I don't know if you saw it, but I just did a little walking tour. And then now every time I go over, Jeff and Laura's, my brothers, my niece Olivia's like, let me see that video. I'm like, oh, somebody likes it. You know what I mean?
That's
Like,
awesome.
So it's cool to actually, I don't know, that encouragement goes so far, because I feel like if I was just doing this and I wasn't getting any feedback, it's like, it's time to rethink what you're doing,
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah. When I got a piece in the New England Journal of Medicine on my experience of being in a clinical trial and from a patient perspective. And I, about 3 weeks after it came out, some oncologist in Australia wrote to me and was like, he works on clinical trials, but he just hadn't thought of the patient perspective. So getting that feedback, like, because I was like, our doctors, this is like such a medical journal, like, our doctors just going to skip a patient essay, and just be like,
Yeah.
What do I need?
Know? Yeah.
Exactly. But he was like, yeah, I didn't realize that, like, this is how, or like there was one part in the essay where I was writing about, like, what about all these people that do these anonymous trials? Like, are they ever remembered? Like, so many people, like, I thought of like our Nan, and okay, from the time Nan had the same disease I have till now, there's probably been thousands of clinical trials and hundreds of thousands of women who've been in these clinical trials, and things have only advanced a few years. Like, my prognosis is only a few years better than Nan's was over 3 decades ago. But then you think, but in all that time, there's all these women that like took all these risks in order to try to further science. And then I'm like, does anybody think about them or remember them? And then somebody from the clinical trial team at the hospital where I go said, yeah, we do a memorial every year. We say their names. We say the names of people that have been in a clinical trial. Like, we have a ceremony. Like, but I had no idea, like nobody ever shared that. And I was like, I think that would make, like, you should share that with patients. Like, patients aren't necessarily sharing their experiences with clinicians, and then clinicians aren't sharing back with patients, how we're impacted by one another, or how we could even change. Just by being more open, we could change things. Like, you don't have to make a major change, but just like, oh, okay, yeah, the doctors do think about trial participants. The doctors do remember people who contributed or like were also interested in furthering the science, and just stuff like that. Like, but on any given day, you put down a piece of writing and just think, who cares? Like, it's just my personal thoughts, just my thoughts. But then other times I'm like, oh, okay, can touch a chord, and then you can have a conversation, and then you can learn things you like wouldn't have learned, which is so cool to me, that a piece of art, a piece of writing, a piece of video can make people have conversations. Like, you can have conversations with strangers you never met, but you can also have conversations that with people you see week to week, but they're a different nature because you'd kind of never gone there.
You never opened that door before. Yeah.
So
I gotta, it's hard to keep up with because, there's a lot of people weighing in nowadays, but every once in a while you get a comment that like really stands out, like this one woman who, when I did that walking tour, and I just kind of had fun with it, and, just her perspective on it, like, oh, these are places I would have, maybe not seen, or the way you did it, you kind of, you kind of did it in a faster pace, and like the style of what you did was so much better for me, particularly for these reasons.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh wow, like, I would have never known that or even had that perspective before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like it's challenging because I want to try to do my best to keep up with all of that, but sometimes it's not just like, I never want to feel like I don't have enough time for somebody who shared something with me, and but like sometimes I'm really good at it and about it, and sometimes I'm like it's hard to keep up with everything, but I just do my best. I do my best to try to respond, or at least let people know in some way that I appreciate it. Think of it.
Yeah. Well, if I can put in if you ever do a video of like the restaurants and places to go in Chinatown, that's a video I need.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Might have to have Dan on that one too, because he's more of the expert than me on that. He loves that area.
That'd be fun. That'd be fun. You and Dan doing
doing a little food tour of Chinatown.
Yeah.
Dan, we need you for that one. One thing I was thinking of discussing at some point is our family and family dynamics to some degree. I don't know, again, I know it's personal stuff, but I think there's some things that probably will feel comfortable talking about. I guess I'll figure I'd start with asking you, like, how would you describe our family?
Oh my God. I mean, at this point in my life, I would say huge, totally a humongous, interconnected, like, giant family, and that like at this phase of my life I'm super close. I'm like a loving and close family, but also a family with family history of a lot of trauma and addiction and some secrecy and shame around that made it hard for great parenting. I think your mom did a good job, and she did a good job, an especially good job. But I think there's, there's definitely been challenges because I think people have been trying to break generational cycles that haven't always been super visible or concrete or talked about, but have had some impact on a lot of members of the family. So I think the family dynamics can be complicated, but I also think, like, more than anything, it's a loving family. It's a caring family. People are connected by choice, and and love. But I do think there's been, at least for me, like my own family of origin, I'll focus on my own stuff. I had a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse and neglect and dysfunction in the family I had growing up, and that definitely had an impact and took a long time to heal from, and required a lot of work to heal from in order to be a parent that I felt like that I could even be a good enough parent, that I could manage parenting. So for me anyway, I would say super loving, huge family, and some complicated history that wasn't inherited.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things that, as you grow older, right? To a degree, some things you're shielded from, some things you're slowly made aware of, and overall, I always felt like, yeah, it is a very loving family, a big, lots of family gatherings, lots of special good times, and positive memories around all that. And then just slowly coming to age, and digging a little deeper and asking questions and trying to understand more about the history of things, and there's always an appropriate time to talk about some of these things, right? So at certain ages it probably didn't make sense to always
Yeah.
have a full open understanding of everything that was going on. But I always found it useful as I'm getting older and understanding what happened, and how did things get to where they are today, and,
Yep.
and what was that like, and even things that are happening at any point in time, like, oh, why, I wonder why it's like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that that's another thing that I always felt like you were pretty good about, which is like, if I asked, or if I was curious, or you were open with me, and you weren't like hesitant or scared or whatever to share these things, because sometimes it might be taboo subjects, or feel like, it's always like a cautious thing, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how do I protect certain things, or what should and shouldn't I disclose?
Yep.
But I think when we get to a certain age, it's like, okay, well, you recognize I can handle things at certain points, and after doing the work that you've done on everything that you've been through, now you're at a place that you can talk about it, and to whatever degree you feel comfortable.
Yeah, and it's like there's certain subjects like addiction where it's like, I think at a lot of time, and I would have had a lot of shame. Like, my own father was an addict, and he was homeless, and I didn't know him because of because he was and he was violent. So I mean, it was safer not to have been raised by him, but his absence and his addiction still had an impact on me growing up, and then impacted the relationships I later had with step parents, or in my own just bigger relationships. But I think, like, when I was young, I had so much shame about, say, having an addict for a father. But I think as I've gotten older, I'm also like, I'm not proud of it, but I don't have shame. It's just like, it's just a thing that, it's like a seasoning that affected, like, how I was, how I developed. It was a flavor. It impacted me. It obviously impacted me, and some of those things that impacted me are more pleasant and pleasurable and socially acceptable to talk about than the things that didn't, but they're all equally important. And I think the shame can do so much damage, because, like, the not talking about it, I feel like, can be more damaging than talking about it, at least for me. I think everybody's different in how much they need to know and explore and share. And I was definitely one that, like, the more facts, the more information, the better. I don't think that is something everybody is necessarily driven by that same inclination. That was just like always the way I was. Like I interviewed Nana when she was sick. Like I wanted to know her life more, and like I think that's just always been important to me. But I think professionally, as I've gone on, it's like, yeah, these, until we understand kind of what shaped us, it's hard to be free of it. To really, like, you kind of have to understand what the foundational blocks were in order to figure out like what you want to excavate and maybe replace. You know, like, so for me it's been important, and it's also just like interesting because I'm curious about human behavior and like what brings somebody to a point, or what might it have been like to be a parent at 16 versus 36, or stuff like that. Like obviously that is going to have a big impact. My experience of parenting was a lot different than my mom and father's, because I was 20 years older when I became a parent. So it just, yeah. So, I mean, I think family dynamics personally are really important. And, and for me, at least, when there's been trauma in the past, it's also like a point of celebration. Like, look at how much people have overcome. Look at what people were dealing with, and then look at what people accomplished in light of that. Because if you don't know the whole story, I think you also can't appreciate how far people came from where they started. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people in our family came so far from where they started and learned so many things that weren't inherited things. Like a lot of people have, like when I bought this house and I inherited a garden with this house, I'm like, this is what it must be like to have a healthy childhood. Like it comes with roots. You have things, you might want to like transplant things in the yard, but you come with like, there's trees, there's perennials, there's like someone's already tilled the soil, someone's already carved out the garden bed, somebody's already shaped out, like done all the mulching and figured out where the bushes go.
Order,
like
yeah.
There's so much there as opposed to like concrete with like a weed sticking out. And then if you want to turn that into a garden, what's going to be required to dig all that up, to get it out, to bring in dirt, to bring in nutrients, to bring in soil, to like then have a vision of like, where do shrubs go and how are those different than annuals or perennials? How is that different than like planting a tree in my front yard? I just feel like in some ways, emotionally, some people inherit this bountiful garden from the day they're born, and other people have to create like a little potted container garden, like maybe outside their window, and then grow from there and grow from there and grow from there. And if you don't know the differences from where people start, you know, it can skew your judgment about like what people have accomplished and been able to do. And starting with a bounty versus maybe starting with a deficit. It doesn't mean we all can't get to a bountiful place, but I'm also not a person who believes like that doesn't have an impact or take different amounts of work or isn't going to take a different toll.
Yeah, and I think it also goes a long way towards understanding a person, their actions and reactions. I think, you know, sometimes if you see somebody responding in a way that you don't understand, or you maybe personally wouldn't respond in a way, you know, there's a reason for it, right?
Yep.
You know, whether it's a valid or invalid, or, you know, whatever the history is behind it, something led them to now do things this way, you know, respond in this way. And, you know, you may even have a judgment as to whether or not it's a healthy, unhealthy response, you know, or whatever. But, you know, it's really hard to make that type of judgment if you don't understand the full story.
Exactly. And so much of the time, it's not even whether it's healthy or unhealthy. It's just, I mean, we definitely have our judgments about what's unhealthy and healthy, and including in ourselves on our own responses, you know. But it's also sometimes, oh, that was just a survival response. Like that person was in survival mode and they were just sheerly operating under living through it. And like the rules that apply for living through something are different than when you're already safe. And I think it's a totally different way of thinking and operating in the world if you fundamentally already start off feeling safe or start off feeling unsafe. But again, like I think like one of my best friends, Kathy, she had, I would say, she had 3 kids that are all grown, all in their 30s. And one's 40 actually now, but and she's had a good, healthy relationship. And I always get parenting advice from her because, as well as from your mom, but like because her kids are grown, and I'm like, all right, she still has a relationship with her kids, and her kids are grown. And sometimes when I'm going through something, I mean, Kai's 20 now, but when she was younger, I would often turn to this friend and be like, is this a normal parenting thing, or like is my own trauma history coming into play? Like, am I overreacting because of my own history? Like, it would be nice to have somebody to bounce stuff off of. Like, if like when Kai started driving, like that was a particularly fearful time for me. I was like, oh my God, she's out in the world. She's 16. She's gonna like stop at Stop and Shop on her way home and be in a parking lot or a driveway or a garage or something. And like, I thought she would be so vulnerable. It like scared the crap out of me. And I was like, how much of this is like my own fear versus how much of this do I want to share with her and be like, you should carry mace. Like, you need to protect yourself. Like, how much of this do I want to share with her as like good parenting, or how much of this is like, some of this I need to not share because it's coming from me thinking the world is just a scary place. And I don't necessarily want to share from that place. So like for me, it was good to have people that I could check it with, because it felt to me like it's all true. It's a terrible, scary world.
You want to give good, like the point of giving advice is to give good, proper advice that, but there is a certain point where that advice can now instill fear and, negativity or something and that you didn't mean to.
Yes.
And you want to know where that line is, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good to understand your own, like, okay, I know I tend to be on the fearful side and I can't change all of that, but I don't necessarily have to broadcast, amplify, magnify, or like share that first, like, because I know I probably already got that covered because that's my tendency. And I maybe want to like dial it back a little bit or stuff like that. Like, so for me, knowing even my own weaknesses as a parent, like, can help. And not that, I mean, you still miss things. Like, I still totally miss things with parenting that I still wish I had shared, that the world was more, not just something that you need to protect yourself from, but like this big open place for adventure and excitement and opportunity, as well as a place like that you need to be smart, street smart, and like be aware of the dangers. Like, I think too much of my life I would have done your video walking around Boston, and it would have been, look out for that. Look out for that.
Pothole's going to lift up. That's a bad guy.
Yeah. And that way of looking, if that's where you're focused all the time, you're going to constantly see things that are dangerous and scary if your orientation is that.
How you interpret the world, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what you're looking for. Like, you can always find what you're looking for.
Exactly.
And I think I, for the most part, like I consider myself a street smart person, and I'm aware of the dangers, and I've been exposed to enough bad things that, like, okay, I feel like I know what to look out for, but I also am lucky to have enough positive experiences and trust in myself and in trust in, certain things to know where that line is, and, get out of dangerous situations and not feel, not feel like it's stopping me from doing something that I would imagine doing or something like that, or getting too fearful or, kind of getting withdrawn into myself, on an adventure.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I love about you is like you've crafted your life and been creative about it, including the ways you make money and when you do it, how you do it, what you prioritize. Like, I feel like you've been pretty creative and unconventional about how you've crafted that, but it's been intentional, and you always like make it work, like, so it works for you, and I admire that. I think I was older than you before I think I felt like hey, wait, I can make my life. My life is what I make it. Like that for a long time, I just was like, security, make sure you have enough to pay the bills. If something goes wrong, make sure you have enough to cover it. Make sure you're not like a burden or, you know, make sure you don't need to depend on anyone else because there may be nobody else to depend on. Like that sort of a mindset, which was just really focused hard and heavy on security. And then as I got more healing and realized like there's more to life than just like surviving it, like this is like, and like kind of waking up to see all the beauty and the bounty and the like what's amazing. That for me came later and like, oh, I can deliberately put these things in my life that I like. Like if I want 4 animals, I can have 4 animals. Like that's not everyone wants to have that many pets, but like if they bring me joy, I get to choose it. Like that is a profound privilege of being an adult. Like it is amazing. Like you can shape a lot about how your days look and not all of us, I mean, and for me that feels like an incredible privilege, like that not everybody has, and that I didn't even have. Like for a lot of my life, I missed even, I think that's one of the reasons I really want to spend time with people now, because I think there was a lot of years and times when I was so safety focused, I missed like beautiful things that were right under my nose and I wasn't seeing them because I was like looking for maybe what was coming next. And there's some vacation times or times when I was anxious and I was checked out because I was like attending to my own anxiety or my own anguish of some kind or my own worrying. And then I was like missing all this like fun and laughter and games and like just good stuff that was like very plentiful that I wasn't always taking advantage of. So, I love thinking back on like those family vacations where were playing games and there was like 20 people around a table. Like we're all eating food together. So there's some dysfunction and trauma in the past, but like there's also so much people really wanting to spend time together and see each other because they care about each other, not just out of obligation, which I really appreciate. And especially after COVID, appreciate more.
Yeah, and that that I recognize is a fortunate situation that like you don't choose your family, right? So we just so happen to be lucky to be in a for the most part people like to be around each other, and look forward to those moments and sometimes I hear different friends or different people talk to me about their family dynamics and they usually find their way into a setting of friends or whatever it may be that can give them that sense, but it is really like a special thing to have within your home and to be in touch with our siblings and cousins and aunts and uncles and feel connected and excited to see them and all that. Yeah, definitely, like it is one of those things that again shapes your world, right? Like, oh yeah, when you're a kid this is just how everyone must be, and then you grow up and you're like, oh no, it's not always like that. So that's actually something I should really be happy about, don't take for granted and appreciate.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think family has been such a big part of my life. I don't know, we always come back. Like that's where we always go back to. We friends for the most part. I've had some friends over the years, and but like the one consistent piece has always been family.
Yeah.
Christmas parties, Thanksgivings, and a optional birthday party every 3 weeks. 2-3 weeks. I think there's some good people in our family.
It's true. You're that house on Montclair Ave. Like I have had Christmas there since for 40 something years. Like it's crazy. Christmas Eve. Like on Montclair Ave, except for the pandemic, like That's like a long traditions.
Yeah, and same thing with Harvard. You know, and I know it's different nowadays, but that was a staple of Thanksgiving. You know,
Yep.
just like going to that house in the woods and you know playing in the yard and throwing things around out there and you know going inside and just everything about that place. You know, it's just such a like oh that's what Thanksgiving means. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like that's
Yep.
in my head. Like you know, I mean not getting into political aspects of Thanksgiving
Yeah.
any mean, but for me, it's like family and food and you know lots of fun times.
Yep.
So
Yep.
like yeah, and I think that when you remember the flip side of that too, right? Like you know holidays and what they should mean or what you think they should mean versus sometimes what they come to mean and you know you can interpret them however you want but some people oftentimes can get jaded or have negative views on you know certain holidays whether it's you know lack of family or commercialization or feeling like there's some type of other obligation that
Yep.
puts a negative strain on them
Yep.
you know and you know I always want to acknowledge that and recognize that because you know just because it means something so good to me it doesn't necessarily always it's not the case you know.
No, no. And I mean, there's times in my life when I didn't have closeness. I mean, I was lucky to have your mom, but there was times I wasn't talking to my siblings and my own mother and didn't wasn't doing holidays and especially in my 20s and early 30s because there was a lot of what I felt like there was too many elephants in the room to walk around that I wasn't willing to walk around. And until a certain amount of air could be cleared, I felt like I couldn't be myself. Like it almost felt like a choice, like I had to choose myself and my health versus dynamics that felt unhealthy and like they like weren't good. And over time, finding a balance between like honoring the connections between my mother, stepfather, and siblings. And now I'm like super close to my siblings. Like, so it's like a beautiful thing over time. But there was times when it felt like we were stuck kind of in the roles we inherited as kids and like had to learn to kind of meet and respect each other as the adults we are, not just kind of in those roles we were in when we were young. And, like I'm very grateful. For me, that work has just been like nothing but beneficial because it's just like compound interest. Like it's the kind of work that is like the benefits only keep growing, like having done it. Like it's just not, for me, it like doesn't feel like it's wasted at all. But I also, you're right, like there's people that don't even know their cousins. Like I know people and they're like, they talk about their cousins like their acquaintances that they've maybe see once every 5 years at a wedding or something.
Yeah, it's usually because of distance, but it could be for other reasons as well.
Yeah.
But hey, yeah, I kind of know this person, I'm related to them. But like, for me, it was like, oh yeah, we used to drive up, to Bedford or to Harvard or to wherever, and see them on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
And it's always great when you see them, like that one crazy cousin or
Yeah.
that, like just different things like that, like just shifting the, I mean, even having 3 siblings and 4 siblings, now all of a sudden 7 more or 3 depending on where we're going, 3 more, and it just changes everything, and it sort of influences you in new cool ways.
Yeah.
Getting introduced to new things, art, just things like that's not something we do or see typically, but that's kind of crazy, thinking about like Jamie jumping out of a tree or something like, man, they're cousins, Love you, Jamie. Yeah.
And some relationships can't be repaired. Like I think that's another thing that is in a lot of families, including ours. Like there's some relationships that there's pain and tension still, and like not everybody is at every event because of painful stuff and unresolved stuff, and like that's real too. So I feel like that for me it's worth looking at, like that kind of stuff, and just sometimes like with speak of say my biological father, I never chose to reconcile. Like there were times I was thinking I'll go search for him. There was times my sister and I were thinking we should hire a detective when he was alive. Maybe we should look him up. There's reasons he's was an alcoholic. There was trauma in his own life. But he was dangerous. And it was like, do I want to bring somebody into my daughter's life who was dangerous? Never mind to my own life, who was violent. But if this person's still violent and hasn't gotten sober, am I allowed to divorce my parent? You know, and am I allowed to say my health and well-being comes before you, even though there was other times I'd be racked with guilt, like on Veterans Day. I'm like, this person was a veteran, and who's taking care of them, and whose responsibility, if not me, a daughter, like, are they? Like, what is required of me or expected of me? And then, but if this person really wasn't a father, and what a father should be, why do I expect myself to be a daughter, and what a daughter should be when that really wasn't there? So like, those are questions like I know I grappled with a lot. And then you know, there's not always easy, comfortable answers of, you know, who it's safe to be near, and the limits of unconditional love. You know, like I might love someone and wish them well, but not want to share a meal with them.
Yeah, and that sort of makes me think about the same. The timer's about to go off. Let me just shut that off. The same rules, you know, of relationships and friendships, reciprocation, respect, and, you know, all these things. That speaking on unconditional love, they're still there with our family, right? Like there's requirements. Even the requirements might get a little more bent, or, you know, like you accept more or you're willing to forgive more because they're your family, but they still exist, you know. We're still all people trying to, you know, get through this life and you know, get the love and respect and that we deserve and need. So regardless of who you are, you know, those things don't change. It's just, you know, maybe you are a little more forgiving because it's my brother and he smacked me in the head, and, you know, I'm going to give him a pass, but I might not accept that from a friend. But at the same time, my brother shouldn't be doing it either, you know.
Yeah.
Not that my brothers are smacking my head anymore. It's been a while since it's happened. I know you have a phone call to make. I have one last thing. I'm not even sure if I'm going to include it, but okay. So I can't remember if I mentioned this to you, and this is not the official cover, and it might not even be the name, so I'm going to block those. But sometime soon, maybe through this, I'm not sure, or I might, you know, at some point, I'm going to be releasing the book, the writing that I have been working on.
Cool.
Yeah, this is not even. It's not done, you know. Right now, this is just, you know, still conceptual. I you know, did the cover art myself. I did the writing myself. I trying to do as much as I can independently, but now I'm starting to lean on some people. Gonna send a copy to Jenny to help me edit and review, and anybody else who wants to, you know, read it. But have couple different ideas for the title. Once I officially get that, I'll let you know and put it out there. But yeah, either early 2023.
That's so cool. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about it. It's been such a challenge because honestly, like every time I get into my writing groove, I get rocked, you know.
Yeah.
First it was the divorce, and then I had this writer's block, and I traveled, and, you know, I was doing all these things, and then I finally got back to it. A few other things came up, and, you know, every time I tried, like right now I'm putting it together for Jenny so she can edit it, and then I got rocked again, and, you know, now I have other things coming up, but it's gonna come out. It's gonna get done.
Yay!
Yeah. And
oh my God, that's so exciting! I cannot wait.
Yeah. So I'm still figuring out how to release it. I'm a whole nother aspect of like putting yourself out into the world,
self-publishing, or getting in it, or all the.
Yeah, and just your thoughts, and, you know, I mean, you put your writing out all the time, but like, you know, I just put a little post on my social media occasionally, and that's great, but it's not like, you know.
There's so many different ways, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Oh my God, I can't wait till I can read it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you know, you're definitely privy to an advanced
Awesome.
reading. You know, any feedback is welcome if you're up for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's that.
Yay, congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. See, everybody, I have been doing something. A few other things too that had to get stopped, and different different ideas and different things that I was working on that just circumstantial, the divorce, the whatever, content that I could never use again, so just a lot of challenges, a lot of roadblocks, but we're close enough that I can even put it out into
that's
the
amazing
world, so that's that.
It's amazing. Congratulations. I cannot wait. So yes, I cannot wait, and to be continued. I cannot, would love to read it, and can't wait till I can.
Thank you. And thank you so much for taking this time today.
Yeah, thank you for coming and setting everything up.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I look forward to chopping this one up. My mom's definitely waiting. She's excited about it as well. I'll let you get to your phone call, but yes, I love you
awesome.
always.
I love you. I'm gonna give you a big hug.